My name is Sukhdev Singh. Today is June 21st, 2015. I was 23 years old. I lived in San Jose, California. I grew up in New Delhi. I moved from India in 1982. We were sitting in our living room watching news on CNN, and there was a breaking news about activities in Punjab that the army has attacked the Golden Temple. Not much, not much. Other than like whatever propaganda Indian government was distributing, they were just showing that. We found out later that there was a total news blackout. We were not getting any calls from Punjab. There was no internet. The means of communications were limited. First reaction was anger, a lot of pain. We were crying, not knowing what to do, a lot of confusion. Right after the news, the next day, a lot of people gathered in Fremont Gurdwara, and I didn't know too many people before that. But when I went there were hundreds of people. People were crying, people were angry, people were outright, like yelling. There are a lot of commotion, chaos in community. Right after the very next weekend, I believe, there was a big protest in San Francisco in front of the Indian consulate. People from all over California came. There were people. There must be at least 10,000 people converged in San Francisco, and there was a sea of orange turbans and chunnis in showing solidarity with the what happened in Punjab. We didn't know right away because there was so much news blackout. But after a few days, we found out that my grand uncle. Well, first we found out he was missing for several days and weeks, and then they never found his body. Actually, what he's went to Darbar Sahib, actually to Amritsar from Ludhiana to have his eyes. He has cataracts or something that he wanted to go get treated, and we know he left around 1st or 2nd of June from Ludhiana area, and then but we never found what happened to him. So we presumed that eventually he was killed. And also we also found out that one of my cousins who lived in Amritsar was picked up by police in months following June. I think maybe it may have been right after June. I'm not sure. But for many weeks we couldn't communicate anything with Punjab, right? So we didn't know. So slowly we found out that they picked him up on some pretext, and then he was tortured, and he was in jails for several months at least. So like I said, like first we had a lot of anger from June onwards, right? And when the news broke that she has been killed by 2 of her own bodyguards, the first reaction was, we were sort of happy, that she had been punished in the Sikh tradition, and then, but very soon, that happiness turned into sadness because there were massacres breaking out all over India, almost in unison. That people were, we all heard the news about people getting burned alive. Thousands and thousands of Sikhs were killed in Delhi, and a lot of families we knew in Delhi were affected. So I'll share a couple of things. So prior to our immigration to U.S. in 1982, our family my brother had a government issue apartment in Trilokpuri. Trilokpuri was the epicenter of the massacre. So we were, up until like 1981, early 1982, our plan was to move there and live in Trilokpuri. But things changed. We ended up moving to U.S. and you know, so we were fine here. If we hadn't moved, I'm sure we wouldn't have survived because we were right in the middle of the Lopburi. That was one. That was what could have happened. Then we several other relatives. One in particular who lived in GT Canal Road area. And they had a small factory. My aunt and her son lived there. Rest of their family was away for one reason or another. So the mob came and attacked. They attacked him with rods and they beat him to a pulp. They thought he was dead, and they left. They took everything. Of course, every single thing belonged to them, and then set the place on fire. But later, my aunt, my mummy ji, realized he was still breathing, so she kind of, it was evening by then, she kind of dragged him through the back alleys to one of their family friends who were Hindus, but they were very helpful. So they stayed there for several months before he found a way to immigrate to UK. We have relatives and friends, who have stories. Oh, I was traveling in the DTC bus, and this happened, and then they would say we ran through these backwoods and so forth. And there are a lot of horror stories, people trying to escape. It was even more resolved to have something of our own, get united. People were working on a lot of different fronts. A lot of people were thinking, we should go back and help them in India in different ways. Myself and some of similar thinking people, we moved more toward the activism. We were at a lot of protest. We opened we started a small group called Sikh American Information Center. We published a monthly newsletter. We will send it to hundreds and hundreds of human rights groups, congressmen, senators, and you name it, newspapers, hoping that somebody would hear something and respond. So that's what we did. We also did some research on freedom of press in India since 1947 up until 1984. We published a report back in '84. We sent it to as many people, as senators and congressmen we thought would read it. Unfortunately, the response wasn't too much because the what we were dealing with, and we were too naive to understand that Indian government had a powerful lobby in Washington and every place else, and they had put in a lot more resources to counter any. Even before the attack, they have put in people in place to do the propaganda. So to paint Sikhs as terrorists and extremists, don't listen to them. So I would go to local libraries and check any newspapers. I would look up on microfiche the newspapers for like New York Times and other newspapers from 1947 onwards. It was manual work, but we found a lot of material, and my focus was to show the lack of freedom of press. That we should never forget 1984. That our generations to come should never forget 1984. Not necessarily in a revengeful way, but to know what happened. It's really important to know what happened. We should never forget that.